Hello everyone, my name is Jennifer and welcome to Best Kept Plans. Today's video is going to be a reading recap for May 2024. If you're interested in seeing what books I read last month, please stick around. As I said in my introduction, we're going to be doing a reading recap for the books that I read in May 2024. May was actually a pretty good reading month for me. I read more books this month than I have in any other month so far in 2024. I also had my first 5-star read since February 2024, which was very, very exciting. I had a ton of 4.5 out of 5-star reads as well. I will, throughout this video, be referencing my Archer and Olive Sarah Cray reading journal. This is an A5 journal. This is where I keep track of everything that I read every month. So yeah, I will be referencing this. I love putting this together. It's so much fun. The first book that we're going to talk about is Every Time We Say Goodbye by Natalie Jenner. I received this as a physical ARC, but also as an advanced listening copy, and I read and listened to this at the same time. I have found that I enjoy doing that, and I did that quite a bit in the month of May. I will say I finished this book on May 1st, and now being a month removed from that, I have very minimal recollection over what this book is about. And I think that that makes my initial rating make sense. I rated this as a 3 out of 5 star. I thought it was good. I didn't think it was bad by any means, but I didn't find it to be extraordinary or unique or very memorable. And sure enough, I can't remember. The next book that I ended up reading, I picked up on Kindle Unlimited. It is a short story and it is called Worst Wingman Ever by Abby Jimenez. I didn't like this one nearly as much as I wanted to. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. At a month out from reading it, I have no idea what it's about. Literally cannot remember it at all. The next book that we're going to talk about is Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. This is the first book in, I think it's called the Maple Hill series. I actually read the second book in this series last year, Wildfire. I really liked it. I have heard that this one's a lot steamier, and I was a little worried about that. To be totally honest, I liked it. I liked it a lot. I didn't think it was so steamy that you didn't get any actual meat to the story. I enjoyed our main characters. There was definitely a villain in here that was like super frustrating and annoying to read about and see our main character get flustered over. I want to continue on with this series. I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that we're going to talk about is a newer release. I was feeling in a romance mood after Icebreaker, so I had to pick this up. And this is Wild Love by Elsie Silver. I love her as an author. Her books are so fun, so easy to get through, thoroughly enjoyable. And this one was no different. I really liked our female main character in here. I thought our male main character was put in a very interesting situation and honestly rose to the occasion throughout this book, which was very nice to see. I really liked the background characters that we get in here, which is good because this is the start to a new series. And yeah, I'm excited about this one, but also excited to continue on with this series. It's called the Rose Hill series. I ended up giving Wild Love 4.5 out of 5 stars. The next book that we're going to talk about is definitely one of my most anticipated reads after reading the first several books in this series earlier this year, and that is Taming 7 by Chloe Walsh. I read the first 4 books in the Boys of Tommen series earlier this year. They were all 5-star reads for me. I loved every single one of them. This series takes place in Ireland in 2005 to 2007, follows high school students. That is when I was in high school, so I feel like I relate to these characters very much. These characters are dealing with very intense things, very difficult things. Definitely look up trigger warnings for not only this book, but the entire series. I have been really interested and curious about the male main character in this book, Taming 7, since the first book in the Boys of Tommen series. you could always tell there was definitely a little something more to him, and I was very curious to see what the author was going to do with his character. And I know a lot of people didn't actually love this very much because it focused very heavily on him, and the romance was definitely a very secondary plot line, but I really enjoyed it. It's, again, very intense subject matter, very traumatic things that are going on that you're learning about. And I thought it was done really well, and I loved it. And this was also a 5-star read for me. This is my first 5-star read since February when I read the Boys of Tommen books, and I just cannot wait for the next book in this series. I love this series. I love. The next book that we're going to talk about is an ARC that I received a physical copy of, but also an advanced listening copy, and that is When We Were Silent by Fiona McPhillips. I instantly fell in love with the cover of this when I received this in the mail. I was so happy to also get the advanced listening copy. I definitely got Sinister vibes from the cover and was hoping this was going to be a mystery thriller, and it was. Seeing how different characters approach traumatic things in their lives in different ways, different perspectives, how outside forces can kind of manipulate how someone deals with it, that was thoroughly intriguing throughout this. I really enjoyed this. I ended up rating this 4 out of 5 stars. Definitely recommend it. Very intense subject matter, definitely sad. So look up trigger warnings for sure. After reading 2 pretty intense books in a row, I felt like I wanted something that was lighter, fluffier, easier to get through. And so I ended up picking up Throttled by Lauren Asher. I have loved the Dreamland Billionaire series. I did read her most recent release and really liked that as well. So I was curious to get into her Dirty Air series. This is all based off Formula One racing, and definitely never read a sports romance with Formula One in it, so curious to see how I was going to feel about that. It was what I needed it to be at the time that I was reading it, which was something that was light, fluffy, easy to get through. I did want for more, I think, which is why I rated it 3 out of 5 stars. Again, not bad. Something that I would say if you're in the mood for a light, fluffy romance, pick this up. After reading that, I did decide to go right into the second book in the Dirty Air series, and that is Collided by Lauren Asher. This one follows characters that we meet in the first book. I liked it better than the first for sure. Again, I don't think it's anything like extraordinary or super memorable, but I thought there was some interesting dynamics at play with this one in terms of the main character and what team he races for and what he's going through professionally, and then the fact that he has these kind of like long-standing feelings for our female main character and the potential negative that could have on his career and how he's kind of navigating that. So I ended up giving this 3.5 out of 5 stars. After reading Collided, I got incredibly lucky. So one of my most anticipated releases of this year comes out on June 4th. I'm actually filming this video on June 4th. It comes out today. But I happened to be at the bookstore, and I had seen on Instagram that a couple people had seen this book out in the wild a little bit early. I decided to ask if they had it, and sure enough, they had a box of them sitting on the counter right at the customer service desk. So the woman opened the box and said, "This is what you're looking for," and handed it right to me. And that is Leather and Lark by Brynne Weaver. I loved Butcher and Blackbird by Brynne Weaver so much. That's the first book in the Ruinous Love trilogy, and this is the second. I've been eagerly awaiting this one. I knew we were going to follow along the female best friend from the first book and the male's brother from the first book. That just seemed like such an interesting pairing to me, and I was really curious to see how Brynne Weaver was going to deal with that because of who our main characters are in the first book and what they do for a living, what our male character in here does for a living, how that was going to work with our female main character. It ended up revealing a lot about our female main character. We have a fake marriage, and I love fake dating. I've never really read fake marriage, I feel like, or at least not enough that it's like running through my brain. but I thoroughly enjoyed this. I thought it was done super, super well. I ended up rating this 4.5 out of 5 stars. Just a hair under Butcher and Blackbird. The conflict happened so late in the story that it all had to be resolved very, very quickly. And I think it needed a little bit more time. It needed more time to be delved into from both our female main character's perspective and also our male main character's perspective. We have both their perspectives in here, but when we're really in the heat of the conflict, and I say that like that for a reason, it's only from the female main character's perspective, and I wish we would have gotten both. I wish we would have I just wanted more, and then I wanted a little bit more at the end. So I think the ending was rushed, and that's why it's a 4.5 out of 5 for me. Next, we have a audiobook. This is actually my Instagram challenge book for May 2024. Every month of the year, I listen or read a book that was recommended to me by someone on Instagram. And the book for May was The 12-Week Year, which was recommended by @ElsieSawyer1. I am always very hesitant with nonfiction. I ended up actually really liking this. This is definitely on the self-help side of nonfiction. This one was kind of framed almost from a career standpoint, but also could be applied to just daily life. I honestly could see myself potentially trying to implement this thought process, this kind of planning process into my life potentially at some point. I thought there was good info in here. And so for that reason, I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. I actually really enjoyed it. The next book that we're going to talk about is one that I got a physical ARC of, as well as an advanced listening copy, and that is If Something Happens to Me by Alex Finlay. Listening and reading along, again, definitely something that I really like doing and that I started doing a lot this month. I will say, I was expecting a lot from this because I enjoyed the last book that I read by this author a lot. It's hard because with mystery thrillers, for me, if I figure it out, that doesn't always take away from my enjoyment of the book or my reading experience. With this one, I think the issue for me was that every twist or turn was so incredibly predictable that I can't imagine someone not completely figuring it out. It was just so easily predictable that it wasn't even fun. So I ended up giving this 3.5 out of 5 stars. Didn't hate it, but didn't love it. The next book that we're going to talk about, the next 2 books that we're going to talk about are a duet. And these have been sitting on my shelf for a while, and I knew I wanted to get around to reading them. The first one has been on multiple TBRs this year so far, and that is Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson. I felt like I was in the mood for fantasy. I had yet to read any fantasy in the month of May yet. I didn't know what to expect from this, but man, I got so much more than I was anticipating. I absolutely love this. I thought it was so, so good. I actually really, really love the development of the relationship between our 2 main characters in here. I thought it was slow and steady, and I think that there was obviously an attraction immediately, but there was a respect for each other and each other's skills, and I really loved that. I thought the actual fantasy side of this, the plot side of this, was very interesting and really enjoyed that as well. And that is why I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. Oh, I also listened to this on audiobook while I was reading it too. So this is where we get into the part of the month where I basically listen and read everything together. And after finishing Dance of Thieves, there was nothing else that I could do but pick up Vow of Thieves. I immediately wanted to continue this. And so again, I physically read it while listening to the audiobook. Really, really highly recommend doing that for this duology because it was so, so fun reading it that way. There's definitely a lot going on in terms of the action and the plot in this one. And I would say less of a focus on the romance, but that is because our 2 characters are really fighting for their lives. And they're fighting for their lives in the hopes of coming together again. And whatever the second book in Divine Rivals, this one reminded me of that. And this actually came out a lot earlier, so I should probably say that book reminds me of this. But having read that book already, I definitely got that energy from here. And I love that book and I loved this one. Gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars as well. Highly recommend. After finishing Vow of Thieves, I was so close to actually finishing all of the books on my May 2024 TBR, and I really, really wanted to be able to accomplish that. I have not finished all of the books on my TBR since January. So I decided to pick up Sinister Spring by Agatha Christie. This is a collection of short stories. I read the winter version of this a couple of months back. I do have a summer and a fall version as well, and I am planning on reading those as we continue on in the year. I thought that would be a little bit of a fun challenge. Agatha Christie definitely writes more cozy mystery stories, and I have enjoyed them. I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars, and they're a great way to break up other stories and other genres. And I did actually listen and read this. I was able to find audiobooks for some of these short stories, but not all of them. So the ones that I could find, I listened and read at the same time, and then the others I just read. And again, 3.5 out of 5 stars, definitely like this. After finishing Sinister Spring and having all of the books on my May TBR checked off, I decided to pick up something that I have really, really been wanting to read in the springtime, but didn't know that I was going to have time for. And that is Ready or Not by Cara Bastone. This book screams spring. The cover of this book is so spring. I did get the audiobook for this from Audible and listened and read at the same time, and really enjoyed the audiobook for this. This is a funny story, but getting the audiobook and the, oh God, what's the way that the narrator says words, like, oh, what is that called? Her intonation, or the way that she says things, was so fun and so funny, and I definitely think it added to the reading experience for me. This is an accidental pregnancy, and on paper, that is not a trope that I'm gonna like. But I have now read 3 accidental pregnancy books, and they've all been very highly rated for me. I read Reckless by Elsie Silver. That was a 5 out of 5 star. I read Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young, and that was a 4.5 out of 5 star. And now Ready or Not by Cara Bastone was also a 4.5 out of 5 star. Definitely love this. Definitely recommend this. And then the last book that I finished in the month of May was Love, or LVOE Volume 2 by Atticus. I really, really liked the first volume of this poetry collection. Have been waiting for the second volume to come out. Did not realize it had come out, so when I saw it at the store, it was a pleasant surprise, and I needed to pick it up right away. I will say this is one of my least favorite collections by Atticus. I liked it. I didn't love it. I did feel like a lot of the poetry in here was kind of wash, rinse, repeat. There was a lot of things that sounded very similar, had very similar intent behind them, or conveyed very similar emotions, and was very reminiscent of other things that I've read in poetry in general, but also from Atticus. So that's where I kind of was a little bit disappointed in this one. I rated it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Again, definitely some good poems in here. I don't think you can see it, but I did tab off a few things, but just not my favorite from this poet. And that is it for the books that I read in May 2024. I feel like I had a great reading month, honestly. I really got into physically reading while listening to the audiobook. Really enjoyed that. I had a bunch of 4.5 out of 5 star reads. I had 1 5-star read. And in saying that, we could talk about my top 3. So my favorite book that I read in the month of May was definitely Taming 7 by Chloe Walsh. That was such an anticipated release for me, and I'm just so happy that it finally came out. I was finally able to read it. I'm happy that I was finally in the headspace where I felt like I could read it and enjoy it. In terms of 2 and 3, I had a really hard time choosing between all of my 4.5 out of 5 star reads, but my number 2 spot I did give to Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson. And honestly, I feel like we can use the number 2 spot to put Dance of Thieves and Vow of Thieves together, because I rated both of those 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really feel like I can't talk about one without talking about the other, and talk about how much I love one without talking about how much I love the others. And then in terms of the number 3 slot, I had such a hard time choosing between 2 books. And I ended up putting Leather and Lark by Brynne Weaver in the number 3 spot, but I feel like if you ask me tomorrow, it could be Ready or Not by Cara Bastone. I love Leather and Lark. It's just such a fun continuation of that Ernest Love trilogy. It made sense to put it in the number 3 spot. And that is it. That is it for my May 2024 reading recap. I hope you all enjoyed hearing about the books that I read in the month of May. If you have read any of these, please leave some spoiler-free thoughts down below. I love talking with people about books. And as always, everyone, please be safe. Bye-bye.